What would you do if your husband slid divorce papers across a white linen table at his office Christmas party and hissed, "Sign," or "Get out," while you were carrying his child? Have you ever felt every eye in a glittering ballroom turn towards you, the only black woman in the room, and known that if you cried, you'd be called weak, and if you raised your voice, you'd be called angry? Would you protect your baby with silence or your dignity with a scene? And what if the only reason he dared to do it in public is because he didn't know who you really are? The band was playing that same 3-song loop of cheer, the tree was 12 feet of perfect, and champagne moved like gossip. I'd made it to 29 weeks. No dress could hide the curve of my belly or the way my hands kept finding it, like I could shield a heartbeat with fingers. Evan smiled for his bosses, touched my elbow when the camera phone swung our way, and said, 2 minutes, like a meeting he needed to get through. Then he brought me to a side table, half lit, half hidden, and set a folder down between the flutes. "Let's be adults," he said, teeth bright. "Sign now, we keep it civilized." Have you ever watched a man do cruelty with perfect manners? A woman in a red dress hovered. The same one's perfume was on his shirts twice this fall. Someone behind me laughed too loud at a joke that wasn't funny. A partner I'd met twice lifted his glass and murmured, "Tough quarter, eh?" As if my marriage was a spreadsheet. My throat burned, not just from the humiliation, but from the math I do in rooms like this. If I react, it's "there she goes." If I leave, they'll say she couldn't handle it. If I stay, they'll tell the story for me. Divorced while pregnant, they laughed. That's the headline I could hear writing itself as the pen touched my skin. Have you ever signed your name because not signing felt like standing in traffic with your hands up? I kept my voice low, because that's how you've got to sound to survive nights that want to swallow you whole. "Evan," I said, "please not here." He tapped the line with one finger like a conductor counting me in. "Now," he breathed, or "get out." I looked at the ring I'd stopped wearing last week, still warm in my purse like a small sun I couldn't hold up anymore. I looked at the baby I couldn't see but could feel, our baby, rolling against my ribs like a hand knocking from the inside, asking, "Which one of us are you saving tonight?" And I did the thing I swore I'd never do again. I made myself small. I signed. Tears slipped hot and obvious because I'm still human, even in a room that prefers me made of glass. The pen scratched, the music swelled, someone actually clapped on the other side of the room for something unrelated, and it felt like the soundtrack to my own undoing. "Good girl," Evan whispered, already fishing a handkerchief from his pocket like he was the hero of my composure. "We'll talk terms later. I've arranged a stipend if you keep it classy." Have you ever tasted a word like it came with a leash? Stipend. As if my life could be itemized and pre-approved. As if he handed me permission with conditions and called it generosity. His team drifted closer, cameras up, smiles fixed, Sabrina's ice bucket sweating into the linen. One of the analysts I'd once corrected on a spreadsheet winked at me, like we were all in on the same joke. I hadn't realized until that moment how many people were hungry to watch me suffer in a dress. I stood up slowly so the room wouldn't tilt. I didn't give them a show. I gave them my back. In the restroom, where the lighting is designed to flatter no one, I pressed my palms to the sink and watched a woman I almost didn't recognize breathe. Have you ever had to remind yourself your face is your own after a crowd writes captions for it? The mirror fogged. I cleared a circle and saw it, the line past fear where clarity lives. I'm the woman who learned to swallow microaggressions at holiday parties and code switch at staff picnics and count to 10 when someone reaches toward my hair like I'm decor. But I am also my father's daughter, and he didn't raise me to mistake humiliation for defeat. He didn't know who I really was. That's what steadied my hand when I reached for my phone. Not to text Evan, not to plead, to make one call I promised myself I'd only ever make if I needed a lifeline. I wiped my face, I found the name I'd kept buried under A, far away from prying eyes and curious thumbs, and I whispered a single word we chose years ago in case a night like this ever came. And as the band rolled into another bright, empty chorus, the room outside kept laughing. The corks kept popping. Evan kept shaking hands like he'd just negotiated a raise, blissfully unaware that the paper he thought ended my story just started his part in mine. What would you do if he made you sign at his Christmas party? Would you fold and disappear? Or would you sign, stand up, and let the truth catch up to him? I walked back through the ballroom like a storm nobody bothered to check the forecast for. I put my hand on my belly and promised the life beneath it, we are leaving with our heads up. And by Monday morning, when the right doors open and the wrong ones close, he'll finally learn what he never bothered to ask, who I am and what it costs to try to break me in public. For the pen, before the white linen, there were 100 small cuts I kept calling just the way it is. I'm Maya. I learned early that sometimes the safest thing a black woman can wear is anonymity. My father, private to the point of myth, built empires out of servers and sun. The tabloids call him a trillionaire because they don't know what else to call a number that doesn't fit in a headline. He calls himself a man who hates applause. He gave me 2 gifts, my education and my choice to disappear. I took both. I kept his last name because it's mine too, and common enough that nobody in Evan's world thought twice. I rented a modest apartment, drove a car that didn't announce anything, worked a job I loved in community programs that never once made the front page. Have you ever built a life so quiet you could hear yourself think, and then handed the microphone to someone who liked the sound of their own voice better? Evan arrived the way charming men do, laughing with the volunteers at a fundraiser or my team was begging for laptops for a youth center. He said he admired people who do the real work, the kind that doesn't come with bonuses. He showed up the next weekend to pack boxes and remembered my favorite snack. He introduced me to his friends as the most grounded woman I've ever met, like my lack of glitter was his accessory. At first, it felt like care. Then it felt like curation. Be the navy dress to the partner's dinner. Straight hair tonight. It photographs better. Have you ever agreed to a version of yourself that earns you access to rooms you don't even want to be in? His office parties taught me a language I didn't want to learn. You're with catering, right? A junior associate asked me my first December, handing me a coat. No, I said, smiling the way you do when you're deciding between safe and true. I'm with Evan. Her eyes flickered, recalculated, landed on my shoes, my hair, my skin. Oh, she said, the O people use when a file in their head doesn't match the photo in front of them. Another time, a partner's wife touched my curls and murmured, "It's so playful," like I was wearing a hat. Evan laughed it off. "Babe, pick your battles," he said later, like dignity is a finite resource you have to budget around other people's comfort. We married in spring, under a tree I chose and a tent he chose. He slid a prenup across our kitchen table a week before the wedding. Just standard, he promised. I signed because I had my own guardrails no one could see, and wealth doesn't make you less interested in being believed for who you are. After the honeymoon, he started saying we when he meant I, the way men do when they think they're the planner and you are the plan. We decided you'll scale back at work. We don't need your little nonprofit salary. We should think about how you present. My firm is traditional. I shaved off edges of myself so our days wouldn't spark. Death by 1,000 be nice. When the microaggression slid into macro, I told myself it was stress. He'd come home wired, smelling of expensive perfume I didn't wear, and say, "Don't start," before I even opened my mouth. "She's a direct report," he insisted when I finally said Sabrina's name. "I mentor talent." He showed me late-night emails filled with praise he wrote to himself and CC'd to people I'd never meet. I found a text that read, "Red dress tonight? fire, and watched him delete it while saying it was an inside joke about a pitch deck. Have you ever looked at a lie so shiny you wonder if you're the one who can't see right? Then I was late. Then the stick turned 2 stripes. Evan blinked like a man missing a step. "It's not ideal timing," he said, raking his hair through hair that had never been truly mussed in public. "We're on a partner track year." A week later, he called it a complication we can manage. A month later, it was, we need to be smart about optics. I heard all the other words he didn't say. I decided what kind of mother I was going to be, one who protected a heartbeat, even if the man who helped make it protected his brand first. We tried counseling. He chose a therapist who played squash with his boss. The advice sounded like a policy memo addressed only to me. "Maya, you need to regulate your tone. Maya, perhaps you're personalizing workplace culture. Maya, can you acknowledge how demanding pregnancy is for a man's career?" I sat on that beige couch and watched my anger learn to fold itself into a smaller rectangle so it would fit in my lap. After the 3rd session, I told Evan I wanted a woman of color as a therapist who wouldn't hand me a handbook on being palatable. He said I was making everything about race. I stopped going. He told his friends I wasn't committed to the work. The mask slipped for good in October. Sabrina posted a photo from a hotel bar with the corner of his cufflink sitting in the bottom of her frame. He swore it was coincidence. I stopped straightening my hair for his events. He said the partners prefer professional. I said, so do I. He went quiet in that chilling way control gets quiet when it realizes it can't shape you with witnesses. Then he suggested a compassionate separation before the baby. Cleaner, he called it. We'll look better co-parenting if we don't have a messy divorce. We better look. December punched the calendar. His firm's office Christmas party invitation arrived, gold-foiled, smug. He needed my presence. Optics again. "Come for an hour," he said. "Be gracious." I almost said no. Then I thought about the story he would get to tell if I didn't show up. She's unstable, she's dramatic, she isolates. I zipped the only dress that fit, pressed my palm to the baby who pressed back, and walked into a hotel ballroom set to pretend joy. I clocked every face that had ever mistaken me for staff. I clocked Sabrina's red dress, cinched, triumphant, the same shade as the emoji from his texts. I clocked Evan on a stage I hadn't put him on, toasting resilience and family like the words had never burned anyone. Have you ever walked into a room that already wrote your ending and felt your spine refuse the script? On the way out the door that night, I almost called my father. Almost. He and I have an understanding. He doesn't buy me out of discomfort, and I don't call him to turn every insult into a teachable moment with a market cap. Only if someone makes you small on purpose, he told me once, and only if your safety or dignity is at risk. Then you use the key. We named the key North Star because he taught me, as a girl, how to look up and know where I was no matter how dark the field got. I put the phone back in my clutch. I promised myself I'd make it through the party like water. Quiet, unbroken, gone before the music ended. Then Evan brought me to that side table. Then the folder hit linen. Then sign or get out. Then I learned what the difference is between being quiet to survive and being quiet to disappear. I signed because in that second, safety wore a smallness I despised and chose anyway for the baby who kicked like a metronome under my ribs. But I didn't just sign. I saw. I saw who he was in public when he thought the room would clap for him. I saw the circle of faces that clapped with their eyes. I saw the line where my father's promise lived. Have you ever realized mid-humiliation that the only reason he felt bold enough to break you in front of witnesses is because he never once asked who you really were? I walked to the restroom on shaking legs, not because I was weak, but because I needed a door to close so I could open another one, the kind you open with a single word you've been saving for a night like this. What does it feel like to be cornered with paperwork while a room full of people who don't love you pretend they're watching a show? It feels like your throat forgetting how to swallow. It feels like counting all the ways you are allowed to be wrong and none of the ways you are allowed to be human. It feels like the only black woman in a glittering ballroom holding a pen like it might bite. Evan tapped the folder. He said, "Be reasonable," the way men say it when they've already decided you aren't. He slid the first page toward me. "It's simple, clean, we're adults." He said adults like a riddle I was too emotional to solve. I could see Sabrina in the reflection of the champagne bucket. Red dress, head tilted, eyes bright with the kind of curiosity that eats. Two analysts hovered behind her, pretending to discuss bonuses, while their phones hovered too. I felt the baby roll, a small wave against my ribs. If I made a scene, I'd be the headline. If I didn't, I'd be the footnote. I flipped to the last page. He'd flagged the signature line with a polite little arrow sticker, as if courtesy could disguise coercion. "You arranged a notary at your party?" I asked, voice soft not to carry. "Don't need one," he said breezily. "Acknowledgement later. This is consent." Consent. A good word when you mean it. A weapon when you don't. "Now," he breathed, and the word fogged the space between us. He leaned close enough for me to smell the cologne I'd found on his shirts. Cedar and citrus and lies. I heard the old script drum in my bones. Keep it classy, keep it small, keep it safe. I also heard my father's voice from a lifetime ago. If someone makes you small on purpose, use the key. Safety first, he taught me. Dignity next. Revenge, never. In public, anyway. I took my pen out slowly, not the one Evan had placed like a prop. Mine. A cheap black gel that doesn't smudge. I pressed the cap between my teeth a second to buy a breath, then clicked record on my phone under the table with the hand that wasn't showing, not to catch him in a trap, to catch myself if I faltered later and tried to rewrite the way this felt. "This is wrong," I said, but quiet, the way you say it when truth is a candle in wind. He smiled like he'd won the round where I named it. "It's necessary." "Don't cry," Sabrina murmured, faux kind, setting down the bottle so the label faced the room. My eyes stung harder. "Do you know how much work it is to be dignified while people root for your pain?" A partner I'd met twice drifted within earshot, swirled his drink and said to no one, "Some people just aren't a fit long term." The way he said "people" landed on me like lint. I signed because walking out without a signature would have meant a scene, and a scene would have meant a story I didn't control. And I have a child to deliver into a world that already calls me too much when I'm just breathing. But I didn't just sign. I wrote 3 extra words in a neat, teacherly hand right under my name, signed under duress. Then I wrote the time and date, because truth deserves a timestamp. Evan's jaw twitched. "That's not necessary," he said. "It is for me," I answered evenly. A server with kind eyes paused at the edge of the table, refilled water, and saw everything. She didn't look away. She set the pitcher down hard enough that it thudded. I don't know if she meant to witness me, but she did. He flipped through the packet like a magician, proving there was no trick. "You'll have a monthly stipend," he went on, voice pitched for nearby ears. "You'll stay gracious, and we'll look like adults. I'll make sure you're comfortable." Comfortable. As if my life was a waiting room he controlled the thermostat for. As if pregnant and humiliated in public could be softened with direct deposit. I kept my face a polite mask because black women learn young that rooms like this punish any crack in the porcelain. Under the table, my hand gripped my clutch so hard the metal frame marked my palm. He slid a smaller page across. His own addendum, not reviewed by any court. An NDA. "Standard," he said. "No posts, no statements. It protects us both." Us. I wrote one sentence in the margin and initialed it so clean he'd need a microscope to pretend he missed it. Not agreed. Coercion noted. His jaw twitched. Sabrina's did too. Smile, one of the analysts whispered like a stage direction, and for a heartbeat, I almost obeyed the reflex that's kept me safe in 1,000 polite ambushes. Then my body remembered something older than training. I do not owe anyone a pretty version of pain. I put the pen down. I folded the folder closed between my fingers so he had to take it from me instead of me handing it over. Tiny difference? Massive fault line. He leaned closer. Breath cool. I told HR you'd be reasonable. Don't embarrass me, Maya. The you in that sentence carried 1,000 other sentences on its back. Be small, be soft, be grateful. I stood up, slowly, so nobody thought I was fleeing. I need air, I said, letting the syllables be steady. He reached for my elbow. I didn't give it to him. Keep it classy, he hissed, for once. Have you ever had to swallow 1,000 comebacks because the baby under your ribs is more important than the satisfaction of landing one? I moved through the room like a ghost wearing my own dress. The tree glittered, the band hopped, people parted and didn't the way crowds do when they've decided you're not as real as their night out. Near the door, Sabrina's perfume hit me like heat off a stove. No hard feelings, she said, faux sincere, her hand grazing my forearm as if we were girlfriends sharing news. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized she thought this was proof she'd won. I didn't give her the dignity of a response. I didn't give her anything. In the corridor, the hotel's gold-framed mirrors reflected me back 12 times. Hair I refused to tame for anyone's comfort. Eyes rimmed red, dress I'd outgrown and wore anyway because I refused to buy a costume for a masquerade. I steadied myself on the railing. A woman from catering, dark ponytail, soft-soled shoes, caught my gaze and held it just long enough to lend me a square inch of courage. "Restrooms this way," she said, like directions are mercy. "Take your time." Inside, I pressed my palm to the marble sink and bent until my forehead touched cool stone. Have you ever made your body into a small shelter and crawled inside it? The music bled through the wall like someone else's joy. My phone buzzed in my clutch. Tasha for my nonprofit, here on a hotel holiday shift to earn extra cash. Just saw. You okay? I typed back one word. Restroom. Then another. Witness. She sent a checkmark and a time-stamped photo from the edge of the room. A sliver of paper. My hand, his finger on the line, Sabrina's bucket sweating on linen. Proof, not for the internet. Proof for the truth. If you've never known the relief of a friend documenting your reality before anyone tries to rewrite it for you, I hope you never have to. I looked at my own reflection and counted my breaths until the shake left my hands. 1, 2, 3. I touched my belly. "I've got you," I whispered to the life listening from the inside. "We're leaving." Then I took out my phone and scrolled to a contact I'd hidden in plain sight, under a fake first name and a single letter for last. A. Carter. I hovered, because once you use a key like this, you don't get to pretend you don't own the door. What would you do if he made you sign at his Christmas party? Rage in the ballroom? Break glass with your throat? Or step into a restroom, wipe your face, and choose a weapon he doesn't even know exists? Your own name, your own network, your own refusal to let this be the story. I clicked call. The line rang once, twice. Then a voice answered that has never once raised itself and has always made rooms move. I said the word we agreed on years ago for nights exactly like this. North Star. And while the party on the other side of the wall got louder, the ground under my feet finally stopped moving. Answered on the second ring like she'd been waiting at the edge of my night. "North Star?" she said. Not a question, a protocol. Have you ever heard a calm voice make a whole room shift, even when that room is 2 floors away and full of people who think you're alone? I pressed my palm to the counter to stop the faint tremor. "North Star," I confirmed. My reflection in the mirror looked back like a witness ready to testify. "Breathe," she said first, because power that's on your side always starts with oxygen. "Where are you?" I told her. Hotel ballroom, his office Christmas party, white linen, and a folder. I could hear keys on her end, quiet and fast. "We're activating," she said. "Listen carefully. Do not argue with him. Do not go home with him. Text me your exact location and the name on the banquet contract." I read it off the program card by the sink. More quiet typing. "Good. You are leaving with an escort in 7 minutes, through the service corridor, not the main hall. The hotel GM is on my other line. He understands you're a protected guest." Protected. The word landed like a coat over my shaking shoulders. "2 on my team are en route," she continued. "They'll meet you by the staff elevator. Names are Mari and Jules. Show no one but them this passcode." She gave me 4 digits. I repeated until they stuck. "Your friend Tasha is in the ballroom." "She is?" "Have her walk you to the service door. She doesn't have to get involved beyond that. I've already notified building security to keep your husband away from that exit." "What about the papers?" I asked, my voice thinner than I wanted. "You wrote under duress and timestamped it?" "Yes." "Good. Keep the photo Tasha took. Forward both to the legal channel I'm texting you. That signature isn't binding, and it documents his coercion. We'll handle the rest Monday." Monday sounded like a continent from here. "And until Monday?" I asked. "Until Monday," she said, "you take care of yourself and the baby. You let us be loud so you can be quiet." The baby rolled under my hand like an answer. "Ava," I said, and heard something steadier return to my throat. "He did it on purpose. In public. He wanted witnesses." "Yes," she said. "No judgment, just fact. He also chose a hotel whose mortgage sits in a trust with our fingerprints on it. A company's line of credit runs through a lender we've recently acquired, and a general counsel who owes us 3 favors. People who build their lives out of optics charily check the wiring." She let that breathe. "We don't humiliate people, Maya. We correct stories with documentation." Have you ever realized the mask you wore to survive wasn't just hiding you from danger, it was hiding danger from you? I'd chosen smallness as a kind of shield. Now another truth stood up inside me. I don't have to disappear to be safe. I can be seen on my terms. "I don't want a headline," I said, the old fear still pacing the edge of my voice. "You won't get one from us," she assured me. "We'll go through boardrooms, not blogs, but we will make sure he never uses a room full of people to trap you, a den." She gave me a list that felt like footholds. "Send the photo, keep your copy of the folder, don't surrender it if asked, screenshot any texts, do not reply to his messages tonight. Silence is strategy, not surrender. Pack a small bag. We've secured you an apartment with 24/7 on-site staff. A prenatal team is scheduled to meet you tomorrow. A therapist who understands racialized public harm can see you this week. I'll sit with you in any meeting you don't want to enter alone." She paused, softened. "You did well to call." I sent the files. My phone buzzed almost immediately with a reply from a number labeled simply, "Counsel, received." Then another from Facilities, "Back entrance, cleared." Then Ava again, "Team is 2 minutes out." "One more thing," she added. "You asked about the papers. If anyone, husband, colleague, or hotel, tries to block your exit, you say, 'I am leaving.' If you interfere, you will be recorded doing so, and my counsel will follow up. You don't need volume, you need accuracy." I splashed water on my face, rolled my shoulders back, and met my own eyes in the mirror. Have you ever watched the version of you that was built for palatable rooms step aside for the version that was built to survive and then build? The room outside still laughed, the band still played. My hand found my belly. "We're going," I whispered to the life under my rib. "Not small, just safe." Tasha was waiting where the corridor bent. She didn't ask questions. "This way," she said, voice pitched low but full. We moved like we were carrying something sacred, which we were. Past the tree, past Sabrina's red, past Evan's back turned to someone more important than me by his calculation, and less important than Monday by mine. At the service door, a man in a blazer I didn't recognize started to step in front of me. "Private area," he said, bored. "She's with me," Tasha answered, but he squared his shoulders like a test. I pulled in one breath, let it out steady. "I am leaving," I said in a voice that didn't tremble. His eyes flicked to my phone, to my dress, to my belly, to the certainty I finally let out where people could see it. He moved. Mari and Jules appeared like punctuation at the end of a sentence I've been trying to finish all night. Ms. Reed, they said, my name with my whole life in it, not the palatable version Evan preferred. The sound of it squared my spine. We've got you. They formed a simple triangle, one ahead, one behind, me and Tasha in between, and walked me to the employees' elevator while the party carried on pretending my life was an entree. In the garage, the car waited with the back door already open and a bottle of water in the cup holder, like someone who cared had walked this path before me. Ava's voice returned to my ear through the speaker. You're in? I'm in. Good. Text me when you're upstairs. Tomorrow at 9, we'll review next steps. And Maya. Yes? You do not need to apologize for tonight. Not to me. Not to yourself. He showed people who he is. You showed who you are by leaving. We pulled out of the loading dock. I didn't look back. Have you ever wondered if the room you just exited noticed the weather change? Inside, corks popped. Outside, the air was cold and clean, and the seatbelt lay across 2 lives instead of 1. My phone buzzed. Evan, where did you go? Followed by Sabrina. So dramatic. I turned the phone face down. Another buzz. Ava, sleep. Monday is ours. At the apartment, keyless entry, a doorman using my name like a promise, I stood in the doorway and realized my body had been bracing for years. I set my bag down. I sat. I cried, the kind of quiet tears you cry when nobody is grading you. Then I laughed once, sharp. Have you ever felt a new chapter click into place with a sound only you can hear? I put my hand on my belly. We're safe, I told my child. And tomorrow, we stop being small. Monday dressed like judgment. Gray sky, cold air, no excuses left. Are you ready to be seen? Ava asked in the car, and I surprised myself by saying yes. I wore what made me feel like myself. My hair the way it grows, a soft suit that didn't ask permission, flats because balance matters when a life leans on you from the inside. We rolled past the lobby where I've been mistaken for staff and where people practice their neutral faces at me. Today, the turnstiles blinked green without a pause. Funny how things happen when the room learns your last name. On the executive floor, a conference room held too much glass and not enough honesty. The partners filed in, smelling of coffee and nerves. The ones who'd smirked Friday suddenly studied their phones. Sabrina hovered just inside the doorway in that red dress like she owned the alarm. HR handed her a seat in the hall. Ava slid a thin folder in front of me. Tabs, dates, a calm that could level a building. We'll let the paper talk, she murmured. The managing partner cleared his throat. Thank you for coming on short notice, he began, eyes ping-ponging between me and the creditor counsel Ava had brought. As you know, certain events occurred at our company-sponsored gathering. You could hear the room choose every word like it had sharp edges. Counsel for our side spoke like a metronome. Our fund now holds the firm's senior notes. Per the governing documents, we've requested an emergency governance review. We are not here to litigate personal matters. We are here because Friday night created operational, legal, and reputational risk. She slid a copy of the policy handbook open to the page Evan pretended didn't exist. Code of conduct, anti-harassment, respectful workplace. Applicable at all company events. HR's director, someone who'd once asked if I felt comfortable at these kinds of parties, read from her notes. We've received multiple witness statements and time-stamped media that an employee used a firm event to pressure his pregnant wife to sign legal documents, and that employees mocked or encouraged her distress. She didn't look at me when she said pregnant. Someone coughed. Someone else found the hinge on their water bottle very interesting. Evan burst in late, jaw set, tie perfect. This is ridiculous, he snapped, then flinched at how that sounded. Why are you here? She's not an employee. Ava didn't raise her voice. Ms. Reed is a principal of the creditor representing the largest outstanding obligation of this firm. She is here as an observer and as the person you coerced in front of your colleagues. Coerced landed like a stamp. He laughed, weak and shiny. So this is what it is. Daddy's money. The room waited to see if I would ignite. I didn't. You used a ballroom and a crowd to make me small, I said, evenly. I'm using a boardroom and paperwork to make the truth big. The difference is simple. I brought receipts. Counsel continued, unflappable. We have time-stamped documentation, the signature marked under duress, the date, the exact minute. We have statements from staff and vendors. We have the addendum he attempted to slide across the table that included an unenforceable NDA. Internally, you'll handle your policy breaches. From our side, we've exercised our rights to call this review, freeze discretionary distributions, and require leadership changes pending completion. Leadership changes. The phrase moved through the room like a draft. Sabrina made the mistake of clearing her throat. I don't see what the... Ms. Alvarez, you are excused. This is an executive session. The red dimmed a shade. She stood and left, fast, the way people do when the story stops feeding them. They read the letters, they read the covenants, they read the policies Evan signed when he onboarded, the ones about conflicts of interest, professional conduct at company events, retaliation prohibitions. They read the witness statements. Tasha's photo sat on top like a quiet gavel. They read my 3 words, signed under duress, then the time I wrote by hand in neat ink. Every line I wrote Friday night wrapped back around to hold me up. Evan's patience snapped like cheap plastic. You can't destroy my career because she couldn't keep it together, he spat, then flinched at how that sounded. Look, I was trying to minimize damage. He gestured vaguely towards my stomach. His eyes flicked to the men at the table like they'd nod along. No one did. Counsel folded her hands. You created it. The managing partner finally spoke like a man who'd swallowed something sour. Effective immediately, Evan is placed on administrative leave pending investigation. His access is cut. HR will conduct interviews, a third party will review. There will be mandatory training and policy updates. And, he added, eyes finding me for the first time without sliding off, we will issue an apology to Ms. Reed. I didn't need his apology. I needed the apology in writing with letterhead. Ava was already drafting it with her eyes. He turned to me like he'd discovered the secret door and still had the right key. You don't have to do this, he started. We can keep this classy. Classy, the leash word. I felt my anger rise and sit down in the right chair. I made you sign at your Christmas party, I said, quiet enough that only the people who needed to hear it could. I'm letting the truth sign back with daylight. This is the part where movie versions make the woman flip the table or deliver a monologue while violins swell. That's not what power feels like in real rooms. Power feels like paperwork, like policy, like a man's badge beeping red at a door that opened green for years. It feels like HR collecting his laptop while security stands just far enough to be polite and just close enough to be inevitable. It feels like every person who chuckled Friday night suddenly fascinated by the middle distance. We didn't gloat. We didn't pose. Ava slid a single-page notice across to him. Due to coercion and duress, the signing is withdrawn and invalid. He read it twice, like the meaning might change if he looked harder. You can't take back a signature, he sputtered. Counsel tapped the 3 little words I'd written beneath mine. She already did. When the meeting adjourned, he surged to his feet. This is revenge, he hissed as if we were alone. I stood, steady. This is consequence, and here are mine for you. I spoke the terms I'd decided in the back of the car when Courage climbed into the front seat. We will divorce. We'll do it in daylight with lawyers who don't belong to your squash partner. I'll co-parent with boundaries if you show up to therapy, if you complete a course on coercive control, if you never again use a room full of people to make me small. You break any of that, I seek full custody with supervised visits. You leak, I file every document on record so the truth can breathe. You try to spin this, I hit play. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The room heard me anyway. In the elevator down, Ava didn't offer a pep talk. She handed me a peppermint and our next steps, bullet-pointed, in a way that made breathing easier. Petition to invalidate the party papers, file for divorce on our terms, draft a co-parenting proposal with conditions, open a safety plan, schedule therapy, schedule prenatal, coordinate a statement to staff that names harm without making me fodder. We'll go fast where safety demands it, and slow where dignity deserves it. We don't need spectacle, we need outcomes. The lobby hummed with the same Monday the rest of the city was having. A barista called a name that wasn't mine. A delivery guy cursed softly at a stubborn dolly. Ordinary life resumed in the silence I fought to earn. Outside, December light made glass look fragile and sharp. I breathed cold air that wasn't borrowed from a ballroom. Have you ever felt your power arrive without asking for applause? It's quiet. It fits. My phone buzzed as we crossed the sidewalk. HR, draft apology attached. Counsel, NDA addendum rejected. Tasha, proud of you. The last one made my throat go tight. Friday night, they laughed. Today, they looked away. Tomorrow, I would look somewhere else entirely and build something for women who don't have a North Star on speed dial. But that's later. In this elevator, in this breath, my fear finally stopped narrating. The pen I used Friday night, my cheap black gel, lay in my bag like a relic. I'd keep it. Not as a trophy, as a reminder. When someone shoves a line at you in public, you're allowed to answer in ink. And in daylight. By afternoon, the paper trail started stitching me back together. Our counsel filed to invalidate the party signing, duress documented in 3 words and a timestamp. HR's apology hit my inbox on letterhead. We failed to provide a safe environment, corrective actions underway. Have you ever watched official language try to keep up with harm? It never does. Not fully, but it builds rails you can hold when your legs are shaking. I moved into the family office apartment that night. Keyless entry, quiet hallways, a doorman who said my full name like a boundary. I slept for the first time in months without bracing for a door to open. In the morning, a prenatal team checked the heartbeat. It thumped steady like a small drummer with better rhythm than my fear. That afternoon, I met Dr. Joy. Therapist, black woman, no patience for rooms that teach us to contort. She said, "You were humiliated in public and stayed whole enough to make one call. That's not smallness, that's survival. Now we work on not needing the mask anymore." We talked about the tightrope I walk, how a raised voice gets renamed angry, how swallowing gets renamed grace. She gave me sentences to put in my mouth when nerves stole mine. I wrote them down, like recipes. Evan texted, "We should talk." Then, "Don't make this uglier than it has to be." Then the old leash word, classy. I didn't answer. My lawyer did. All contact through counsel, no exceptions. He replied with a paragraph pretending to be a plan and read like a threat. Counsel answered with daylight, terms, boundaries, dates. Do you know the relief of not having to translate a man's mood into safety because a team has already built you a bridge? I do now. The party papers came back from the clerk stamped void, a single word that felt like a hand on my back saying, "Keep moving." We filed for divorce on my terms. No gag orders, no creative NDAs, a co-parenting framework contingent on therapy, a program on coercive control, and 0 public stunts. Violate one, and the plan becomes court orders with teeth. I didn't write it like revenge. I wrote it like a mother. A judge reviewed the packet and scheduled the first hearing. Ava slid me the calendar invite the way you slide a glass of water to someone who's been walking too long. Evan's firm sent a company-wide memo. Policy updates, leadership review, non-retaliation reminders. It wasn't an apology to me. That lived in my inbox, but it was a mirror held up to a culture that laughed while I signed. The analysts who hovered Friday now studied their shoes and elevators. Sabrina unfollowed me from a burner I never followed back. Microaggressions went quiet around me, not because anyone learned, because consequences spoke louder than champagne. Meanwhile, I started choosing the parts of my life I put back on. I returned to my office at the nonprofit for one afternoon a week. My team set a chair with a back that didn't dig and a policy that nobody touches my hair even to compliment it. We laughed about small things because the big things were already loud. In the evening, Ava brought a proposal the foundation had shelved for When You're Ready, a maternal health initiative for Black mothers, doulas, paid leave stipends, legal advocates for workplace harassment, a hotline staffed by people who can tell the difference between making a fuss and sounding an alarm. She said, "Name it." I called it North Star because navigation shouldn't be a luxury. The first check I signed in that name felt different than every document I'd signed all year. Not a reaction, a direction. We hired 3 doulas before the week ended. We paid for 2 prenatal appointments for women whose bosses couldn't spare them, and sent those bosses a gentle letter on very firm stationery about federal law. We kept a shelf of phones in our office for women who needed a safe number. Sometimes power is a policy. Sometimes it's a prepaid line and a ride to a clinic. Co-parenting didn't become a fairy tale. It became a contract I refused to romance. Evan showed up to the first therapy session with a face that practiced humility in the mirror. He said the word optics once and stopped when Dr. Joy lifted one eyebrow. "You used a room to make her small," she said. Plain. If you want to see your child outside supervised hours, you'll learn to hear that sentence without defending yourself to death. He flinched. He stayed. I watched, not to score his progress, but to protect my peace. At night, I lay on a couch in a room I chose, listening to the baby roll like a tide against the shore of me. Have you ever felt your future rearrange itself without asking for a jury? Mine did. The pen from Friday lay in my drawer, a cheap black gel with a job it had already done. I kept it anyway, not as a trophy, as a reminder. 3 words in the margin can move a building if you let them. The apology from the firm arrived in hard copy, signed. I didn't frame it. I filed it. Paper doesn't heal humiliation, but it does build scaffolding around your dignity while it mends. The firm's holiday photo hit LinkedIn. Sequins, smiles, captions about resilience. I scrolled past without letting my heart snag. There's a freedom in not needing the crowd that once thought you were the entertainment. A week later, my father called. He didn't ask for updates he already had. That's not his way. He asked one question that matters more than money. Can you breathe? I looked out over a city that kept moving without me for a while and somehow made room when I returned. Yes, I said. And the baby? Kicking like they know the beat. He exhaled, the soft sound of a man who builds servers and sons and still believes the bravest thing a person can do is tell the truth out loud. He said, "Good. Let's keep the rooms quiet and the work loud." Do you know the difference between being silent and being sovereign? I didn't, really, until I left a ballroom with my head up and let a boardroom carry the part of my story that required paper and consequence. He made me sign at his Christmas party. I walked away pregnant and humiliated, and then I learned how to sign back. With voided filings, with boundaries that bite, with a fund that turns other women's no into protection instead of punishment. We are not finished, but the next time someone points at a line and says, "Sign or get out," I won't choose between my baby and my dignity. I will choose both, and I won't do it alone. Ava texts me sometimes with nothing but a star emoji and a time. It means we're still oriented. It means Monday is still ours. It means the room can laugh if it wants. We're writing the minutes. The night he made me sign at his Christmas party isn't my shame story. It's my origin of clarity. Have you ever confused surviving with shrinking, mistaken your quiet as weakness when it was actually the last good shield you had left? I did. I kept making myself smaller so I wouldn't be the angry Black woman in rooms that only love us as decoration. But here's what I learned in a restroom mirror under bad hotel lighting. Quiet can be strategy. Sovereignty is the point. Divorced while pregnant. That line could have owned me. It tried. It pressed its fingerprints into my face while the corks popped, and someone in a red dress smiled like I was the evening's entertainment. But the story didn't end at a white linen table. It pivoted at 3 words in my handwriting. Signed under duress. Have you ever watched a margin note move a building? Receipts don't need an audience. They need daylight. I spent years flattening myself to fit rooms designed to mistake my dignity for difficulty. Be reasonable. Keep it classy. Pick your battles. Those prescriptions are how people keep you palatable while they take your power. The work now, the work I'm still doing in therapy, in boardrooms, in my own chest, is choosing when to be quiet because I want to be, not because I'm afraid of who they'll say I am if I speak. I'm allowed to be accurate, out loud. If you're listening from your own ballroom, if a pen is in your hand and a chorus of eyes is begging you to break, hear me. You don't owe anyone a pretty performance of your pain. You don't owe anyone compliance wrapped in a smile. You owe your future self documentation, a plan, and one person who says your name like a promise. Maybe your North Star is a lawyer, a friend with a phone, a manager who will walk you to the door, a sister who will sit in court with you. Mine was Ava and a number I saved under a letter. The point isn't the scale. The point is you don't have to walk out alone. People ask if I regret signing. I don't. I regret the world that made safety look like smallness in that second, but that signature gave me proof. And proof gave me posture. I didn't clap back on Instagram. I turned on the lights in rooms built for accountability. Revenge wants applause. Consequence wants paperwork. One burns out, the other holds. Co-parenting with boundaries isn't pettiness, it's oxygen. Therapy, no stunts, no rooms used as weapons. That's not vengeance, that's me refusing to raise a child in the blast radius of someone else's performance. And the foundation work? Funding doulas, clinics, paid time, a hotline staffed by people who know why don't make a fuss is how harm hides. That's my love letter to the version of me who almost swallowed a whole night to keep a room comfortable. Have you ever traced your way back to the exact hinge where everything turned? Mine is small. A cheap black gel pen, 3 words, a timestamp, and a call I was taught to make only when someone tried to make me small on purpose. Power didn't arrive with fanfare. It arrived as an escort through the service corridor, a void stamp on bad paper, a key card that suddenly beeped red for the person who thought the room belonged to him. He didn't know who I really am. He still doesn't, not completely, because who I am isn't a last name or a ledger number. It's a woman who learned to sit with humiliation for 9 minutes and then stand up with documentation. It's a mother who will not trade her baby's safety for anybody's optics. It's a Black woman who refuses to let a stereotype set the volume of her voice. What would you do if someone shoved a line at you and said, "Sign or get out," in front of everyone? Maybe you sign and live to fight in daylight. Maybe you say no and walk straight to the people who can back your no with teeth. Either way, you are not the crowd's headline. You are your own minutes. I still keep that pen, not because I need a relic, but because I need a reminder. The next time a room tries to decide what I am, I'll remember, I am not palatable. I am particular. I am not classy on command. I am clear on purpose. I can be quiet without disappearing and loud without apology. And when the windless nights come, the ones where your heart stutters and the world insists on its version of you, I will look up, find my North Star, and move. The ballroom is long over. The work is just beginning. And the baby under my ribs, who kept time while the band faked cheer, will never have to learn that dignity is something you barter for access. Not in my house. Not with my name on the paperwork. Not anymore.
A year later, December dressed the city with light again. The same time of year, a different life. Have you ever walked back into a hotel that once held your humiliation and felt your pulse stay steady? The lobby tree glittered. The band tested a mic in the ballroom next door. I wasn't there for their party. I was upstairs with doulas and clinic directors signing a funding memorandum for North Star, our maternal health program that now keeps other women from having to swallow nights like mine. "Miss Reed," the hotel GM said, opening a side room with a view of the same white linen floor I once cried over. "Welcome." The word landed like a stamp that finally matched the file. Cameras hovered at a polite distance. A reporter asked for a quote. "I prefer my work to talk," I said, easy. Behind me, a bulletin board listed new policies for staff at company events. Bystander intervention, a hotline, a promise in writing that sign or get out has no place next to champagne. Nova fussed in her stroller, brown curls, one dimple, lungs that don't apologize for anything. I picked her up and she grabbed my necklace with a fist like a signature. Have you ever watched a future breathe against your collarbone and known you did the bravest thing when it counted? I kissed her forehead. She smelled of oranges and laundry and a life that doesn't have to learn the wrong lessons first. Evan texted at 3:02 p.m. on the dot. "Here for pickup." We built a schedule with teeth and kept it. He shows up on time, takes the class, sits in therapy where optics has no synonyms. He says, "I'm sorry," more than once in full sentences without needing me to sew it up. Progress isn't applause, it's paperwork and practice. I buckled Nova into her car seat, handed him the diaper bag, and reminded him of the rules we wrote when my heart wasn't on fire. No surprises, no stunts. If the room tilts, you call. He nodded, humbler than the man who once wielded a ballroom like a weapon. "Thank you," he said, "not for money, for boundaries." Down the hall, our partners took their seats. The same white linen, a different document. We signed the year's grants, doula stipends, prenatal transport, paid leave bridges for hourly mothers whose bosses still think be reasonable is a plan. A caterer I recognized from last December passed with canapes and paused just long enough to catch my eye and grin, like two women who know exactly what a service corridor can save. On the way out, I stood for a breath at the edge of that ballroom. The band slipped into the same bright loop, the tree wore the same glow, but the weight in my chest had changed color. A junior associate I remembered as a smirk looked away fast. HR met my eyes and held them, apology not as a statement this time, but a practice. I didn't need the room to know me. I needed to know me in the room. Outside, the air bit and cleared. Ava tucked her scarf tighter and bumped my shoulder. "Interview requests will come," she said. "We'll keep the work loud and your life quiet." I smiled. "North Star speaks for me." She nodded towards the stroller. "And she will too." That night, in my apartment with the slow radiator and the view that looks like a promise, I wrote 3 things on an index card and slid it into the drawer with the cheap black gel pen I keep on purpose. 1. Document the truth. 2. Leave rooms that shrink you. 3. Build doors for women coming behind you. When fear knocks at 2 a.m., I open that drawer and let the paper answer first. Do I still think about the white linen table and the pen that shook in my hand? Yes, but it doesn't own me. It orients me. "He didn't know who I really am" used to feel like a sentence stuck in my throat. Now it feels like a sentence with an ending I wrote myself. He didn't know who I really am. I do. On Nova's first birthday, we lit 1 candle and ate sheet cake in my living room with 3 aunties, 2 doulas, and 1 neighbor who knows how to quiet a colicky cry with a song. No champagne, no performance, just a circle of women who looked at my daughter and saw a future that never has to wonder if dignity is too loud. When the candle smoked, Nova clapped like she did it on purpose. Maybe she did. Have you ever kept a pen not because you needed proof you survived, but because you needed a reminder you don't have to audition for rooms anymore? Mine sits right there, beside the index card. December keeps coming. So do parties. But now, when a ballroom fills with people who'd rather I be palatable than present, I can walk in, or past, or not at all. And whichever I choose, I'm not small. I'm sovereign. I am my own North Star.
For 2 weeks after the boardroom, I woke to a ping I didn't ask for, Evan's reflection post on LinkedIn. Have you ever been tagged in a narrative you didn't consent to? He wrote about learning, about missteps at a holiday event, about protecting privacy. He didn't name me, but he didn't need to. The comments filled with people who love redemption arcs that cost them nothing. My thumb hovered over reply. I could have written a paragraph that would have set the thread on fire. I didn't. Instead, counsel sent one line on letterhead. Eliminate any images of Miss Reed, cease characterizations, and route all communication through legal. The post came down so fast you could hear the air suck out of it. A few hours later, he texted from the approved channel, "I'm trying." I typed and erased 3 versions of, "I'm not your audience." Then I sent the only sentence I owed him, "Follow the plan." That night, I wrote a different statement, the only one that matters, addressed to the child who rolled under my ribs while strangers decided what kind of woman I was. I titled it, "For Nova," and dated the top like a receipt. I didn't post it. I placed it in a box with hospital bracelets and ultrasound printouts and the cheap black gel pen that turned one night around. I told her the part of the story that never makes the headline, how silence kept us safe until we could make it loud in the right room, how 3 words in the margin, signed under duress, talked when my throat couldn't, how a friend with a phone, a woman at a service store, a voice named Ava, and a team with paper turned humiliation into consequence. I wrote, "Never trade your safety for someone else's optics. Never mistake other people's comfort for your job. Document everything. Choose your volume on purpose. When you're unsure, look up. Find the North Star. Move." A week later, an email from HR crossed my screen. New policy in plain language, signatures from the top, training dates. In the footer, an anonymous hotline staffed by actual humans. It won't save everyone, but it might save the next woman who finds herself at a white linen table with a pen that shakes. Sabrina sent a DM from an account with no photo. "I'm sorry." I didn't answer. Not because forgiveness isn't possible, but because I don't hold that key for her. Growth isn't my inbox's job. She'll have to find her own corridor, her own escort, her own daylight. On a Tuesday that looked like any other, my father texted a photo I'd never seen. Me at 5, chin up, hair big and unbothered, holding a crayon like a microphone. Caption, "You have always been sovereign." It made me laugh in a way that didn't hurt. I set it as my phone's lock screen. When fear blinks awake at 2 a.m., I stare at that little girl and remember she didn't practice being palatable, she practiced being herself. Have you ever felt your life click from defense to design? It's not loud, it's not a parade, it's an email you don't send, a post you don't dignify, a plan you follow, a check you sign to build something you wished you'd had. It's co-parenting exchanges that are boring by design. It's a foundation meeting where the only champagne is the sound a woman makes when she realizes her leave is paid and she doesn't have to beg a supervisor to be kind. On Nova's due date, I packed a hospital bag with too many socks and the letter I wrote to her. In the elevator, a neighbor smiled and said, "You look ready." I was. Not because I had a perfect ending tied up with a bow, but because the paper, the people, and the boundaries were finally in the right places. I pressed the button for the lobby, felt the familiar lift in my stomach, and thought about the ballroom 1 floor over, the boardroom 5 blocks down, and the small, stubborn circle of women who stood with me in a restroom when my hands shook. If anyone asks me for the short version, I don't give them the party, I give them the practice. He made me sign at his Christmas party. I signed under duress. I made one call. I walked out. I let paper do what rage wanted. I built something for the next woman. And when the room tried to write my ending, I wrote my minutes instead.